Happy Valentine's Day week. It's such a great pleasure to host this event and to have you here and to be celebrating Valentine's Day and celebrating love. We have a tradition here at A.P.E.X events for this week, which is the Thursday that lands closest to Valentine's Day, which is, for us, it's this Thursday of this week. And that is to celebrate love of all kinds and to really celebrate our queer community and our friends and families and colleagues in that community. In the past, just to give you a little history, we have had, last year we had N-Circle come, a great organization, a Utah-based organization who has homes and programs, and they told us all about their activities and what they do. The year before that, we had the Mama Dragons, another really great organization of moms who are really supporting their children that are members of the LGBTQ community. The year before that, we had Claudia Bradshaw, just an awesome figure based in St. George, who really started the P.E.X chapter down there and just really has been a real advocate for the community. So that's kind of how the history of the event got started. This year, what we wanted to do is personalize it even more. So in talking with our Pride Alliance group on campus, we were thinking, what can we do? And we thought, how great to tell love stories, to talk about the stories of people in and around campus. So we're gonna have a little bit more of a panel discussion today where we really just can get to know each other, share, talk about equality, talk about some of the issues that are revolving around the community today, and then just kind of go from there. So that's kind of a little bit of a history of what the event is and what we're going to do today. So without further ado, I would just love to welcome our panelists on stage. Yay! Hi guys, thank you so much for being here. What a pleasure to have you all here, and thank you for being on stage and just sharing your stories and just sharing, you know, what it means to love, you know, for all of us. So thank you so much in advance. What I'd love to do is to start is just to do a brief little introduction of who you are and what you do and what your association to the university is if you have one. So Eric, let's start with you.
Okay, perfect. My name is Eric Liebhart. I'm 30 years old.
No way!
I don't know when that happened. I'm from Cedar City. My family moved here when I was very young. And then I went to SUU. I studied hotel, resort, and hospitality management. Oh. I recently relocated to St. George, so just down the road, not too far, to be with my boyfriend of 5 years full-time, finally. Yay.
Oh!
And I love dogs. I will, if I see you with a dog around town, I will ask you if I can pet your dog. So
now, do you have dogs?
I do. I do have one dog. She's a quarantine pup, so she's very spoiled and is just very used to us being there all the time. She's an 11-month-old Siberian Husky named San.
Oh.
So I don't know if we have like any anime fans in the house, like Studio Ghibli. If you've seen Princess Mononoke, San, like the wolf princess. She's a wolf. Get it?
Great.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
and Huskies talk. Does she talk?
Luckily, she is not a vocal husky. I say luckily, and there's sometimes where I'm like, oh, I wish we'd have a conversation right now, but we enjoy the silence and and the serenity that she lets us have.
I love it. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Jesse, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. My name is Jesse Feaster. I am also 30 years old, which is great.
No way!
Yeah. And I love aging, so I'm no shame there.
Really?
Yeah, I love getting older.
Why?
And I think it has a lot to do with my transition, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I identify as a trans man, have been transitioning since 2018. But I am originally from Wisconsin, grew up there for most of my life, did move to Montana in high school, graduated high school there, and then lived a long time in Oregon and Washington, so about 7 years there.
Oh, wow.
And then we just recently, me and my wife, we got married in June of 2019, been together for 4 years. And we moved down here because she got a job down at Dixie State as a professor, and then I started school here at SUU in the aviation program.
Oh, so you're in the aviation program now, but you've lived all over, it sounds like.
Yes, I have.
And I want to get back to the aging thing because that is fascinating to me. So you're really just sort of enjoying that process, and it just feels really good to you.
Yes, and I think it definitely comes along with my transition, like I said, starting to feel more comfortable and confident in my body as I'm getting older.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely.
Jenna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, hi, my name is Jenna Boehm, and I am a professor in the College of Education here at SUU. I started as an adjunct in spring of 2012, but just started teaching full-time in spring of 2019? 18. Yeah, I can't remember. It all blurs together because I've been here so long. And I graduated from SUU with my bachelor's in education and special education, so I am very passionate about special education and enjoy teaching future teachers. So I feel very lucky to be able to work in the same department as my spouse, and that that we get to be together and have our family all right here in Cedar City.
Yeah.
And I didn't follow your lead with saying how old I am, but I'm 48 right now.
Yeah. It's not a requirement.
I just thought I'd make a little.
And so your area of specialty is special education, and what drew you to that?
I guess the story of becoming a teacher is a little bit interesting. I lived in Brooklyn, New York when 9/11 happened.
Oh,
and
wow.
some friends and I had started a community art center. And at that time, I worked in fashion. So that moment of something traumatic happening, kind of all those onion layers of the stuff that doesn't matter fall away.
Yeah.
And for me, in that moment, the store that I had opened in the Lower East Side was below the frozen zone, so I couldn't go to work. So I put all that energy into working with the kids. And I knew that someday I was going to want to work with kids. And then I fell in love with a teacher a couple of years after. And that pathway just became very clear.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow, that's so cool. And so you were a New Yorker from
Yeah.
New York to Utah.
Yes.
Wow. That's what people tell me because I came from LA. And people go LA to Utah, New York to Utah. Quite a transition.
Love makes you do all kinds of things.
Now, where did you two meet?
We met at a music festival in Michigan.
Oh.
I had brought stuff from my store in Manhattan to sell, and Nicole was helping a friend sell jewelry, and our booths were kind of across from each other.
Oh, wow. That's
And
so
she
cool.
walked in while I was setting up my booth, and I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Well, thank you. I can't wait to hear more. I know we're going to hear more about your love story. Nikki, tell us about yourself.
All right, I'm 48 as well. Old.
That's it.
Started
I'm
a
not
trend.
saying my age, so I just want everybody to know now that's not happening. So.
I'm a professor in the College of Education as well. My area of emphasis is special education as well. I taught in West Valley City. I share stories when I'm teaching of what it was like teaching in West Valley City for years. I love teaching. I love making a difference. And just recently, I've finally, been comfortable about my pronoun. I loved it when people called me androgynous. I love it when people call me handsome. I love it when people call me beautiful. I like it when people call me a tomboy, because I loved beating boys on the court.
Oh, yes.
And I love, I've been competitive my whole life until we had kids. And there's this saying, you were chicked. So it was fun to, be that one that beat them. I used to race with the boys. To train, I would actually race with the boys when I was training for some of my competitions. So anyway, I just recently, changed my pronoun to they, them, their. And I've had very gender, fluid. And just recently, I'm more confident to just be myself. I feel like I've been hiding for years, trying to be what I think people want me to be. And in sports, I was able to be myself. So I'm happy to say that finally, I tell my kids, I'm your dad, I'm your mom, I'm whatever you want me to be.
Yeah.
And I'm going to provide and be as loving parent as I can, regardless of gender. So that's just some,
Oh, that's awesome.
Anyway, that's a little bit about me.
Oh, I have so many more questions about that, but thank you so much for sharing that. It's so interesting to me that as, in your competitive era, you were less comfortable with that, and now that you're more in your parenting mode, is that part of what has made you more comfortable with your pronoun?
Well, the funny thing is someone said to me, you're going to be a great male role model for your children. And I said, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Well, you're really good at, and they listed all the things. So you're basically saying I can do everything but go to the men's restroom and use it like everyone else.
Yeah.
But yet I am a loving mom, and yes, I will let them cry on my shoulder, so really, what is it? What is a mom? What is a dad? And do we have to be one or the other? So
right. It
just kind of made me think more about myself and who I am, and I think I want to be an incredible person.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And do you feel that moment where you got comfortable with your pronoun, was that sort of an aha moment? Was it a gradual shift? I know it's been a recent one, but was it, that conversation with that person, was it a moment, or was it sort of a gradual shift and then you decided, or how did that
Honestly,
happen?
It's from the youth teaching me that it's okay to be, for a while back in my 20s and 30s, should I transition? Oh. I really feel like I'm more of a dude.
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable with guys.
Yeah.
Of course I love my wife, but I want to hang out and, hang out with the boys. I'm just one of the guys. I've always been one of the guys.
Yeah.
And I used to date all the athletes when I was in high school because we were hanging out.
Yeah.
And not because we loved each other, just because they were my buddies.
Yeah.
And that's, and I was accepted and I was loved. And so then I start getting in this world where, you're supposed to look this way if you're a professor. You're supposed to be like this if you're doing this. Well, you're getting your dissertation. If you dress like that, you might not get your dissertation. So how am I supposed to dress? Well, you need high heels and a skirt and a jacket. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. I don't own it. I wore dresses.
Yeah.
It wasn't my choice.
Right.
And so to answer your question, I just can be me.
Yeah.
I don't have to necessarily
right.
be something that, I'm gender fluid.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to dress like a female, and sometimes I don't. And
right.
most of the time I don't.
Right, right.
And anyway, that's
cool. Thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you more about, your work experience, career experience, expectations, that kind of thing. So we'll definitely get back to that. But thank you all so much for that introduction. Well, I did sort of prep you with, we wanted a love story of some kind. And so I think maybe, Jesse, I'll start with you. I don't want to just keep going like dun, 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 dun. So maybe we'll sort of mix it up a little bit. And it can be anything, but do you have a love story that you'd like to share with us today?
Sure. I would love to just speak to me and my wife and our story. Like I said, we got married back in 2019, met in 2017. I happened to be a CrossFit coach at the time. Me and Nikki were talking about CrossFit earlier. And my boss, who was one of my really good friends at the time, was like, man, my friend, she lives down in Utah, but I'm going to try to move her up here. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I love friends. If you need help, let me know, because I always had a pickup truck. And at the time, I was identifying as lesbian. So this is very cliche, as I got the U-Haul and went down there and picked up my boss's best friend and brought her back to Vancouver, Washington, where I was living and where my boss and I were working together at the CrossFit gym. And we just, I drove down here. She was in Ogden. We were hanging out here down for a little while because, my boss's family lives here, or my boss's family does live here. I don't know if I said had, but they do live here. And we went out camping one night, it was silly. It was probably the same time of year right now, where it was really beautiful at night, but or really beautiful during the day, but
and
freezing
cold,
at night.
Yes.
And
camping
we
in
were
February.
we were silly. Yeah, we were silly. And what happened was, we were sleeping next to each other, separate sleeping bags, but we were both just like shivering. Like we had been talking before we went down there. It's not like I'm a crazy like creep man that was like, get in my sleeping bag. Yeah. But I was like, we're gonna share sleeping bags. This is silly. Like we're both freezing. Yeah. So you get in my sleeping bag and we're gonna double up sleeping bags. And so like our first experience ever was on this camping trip. We were snuggling. There were owls hooting out in the woods. I was freaked out because I'm afraid of owls. And anyway, that's just kind of how our relationship kind of kicked off. Her protecting me from the owls and from the cold. And then
cute.
Yeah, and then we just hit it off. When she moved to Vancouver, we started our relationship there. We eventually bought a 1983 West Valley van again and decided to do a van life for a little while. Came back to Utah, and that's kind of what brought us down here. And yeah, I think that's about.
And when you guys met, you were identifying as lesbian?
I was, yes, and I was. So this was. I had been going to therapy for my gender identity for a few years prior to meeting her. And my relationship prior to meeting her was very transphobic. And so I wasn't exploring that side of me to my fullest because I felt kind of not allowed to, if you will.
Right.
And so that relationship ended.
And was that a lesbian relationship?
It was a lesbian relationship.
But transphobic lesbian relationship.
Yes.
There's another whole layer, right?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And so once that toxic relationship ended, I started to explore myself more. I wasn't out publicly at the time, but I was with my therapist. And then once I met Frankie, my wife's name is Frankie, it was the car ride back to Vancouver. I told her, I was like, this is what I'm exploring. This is how I feel. And she was so accepting, and she's like the most supportive person ever, and has helped me throughout my entire transition, between helping me find doctors and just being romantically and emotionally supportive throughout my transition. But yes, I came out as lesbian in 2009, identified as lesbian until I transitioned in 2017.
And the support of your wife was just such a huge part of it.
A very, very large part of it.
Through that, yeah. Yep. Still along that line, do you have any advice, maybe for anybody in the audience or anybody listening that was particularly helpful to you? I mean, of course, finding your love match, that's great, but do you have any advice that maybe came out of your time in therapy or just your experience that you might offer to anybody who, just might be wondering about things and for themselves?
Definitely. My biggest thing was having a support group, whether that was my therapist or my CrossFit community or my friends or my family that was accepting. So just reaching out to folks that you feel safe to. Finding those transgender affirming therapists is super hard to do down here, but they are out there, or they're moving here, and I think just having a support group was like the biggest thing for me to go on this journey.
Great,
for sure.
Yeah. Building a support group that you can that can offer that strength, that can talk, that you can vent to, whatever you need. That support group is there. That's great advice. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Eric, would you share with us a love story of any kind? And it can be anything. It can be whatever you want. Sky's the limit.
Yeah. I'll tell the story. It's a typical 21st century romance because Tinder. But Matt is my boyfriend of 5 years. We both swiped right. Following that, so he was in St. George, I was in Cedar at the time, and it was just kind of let's meet up, let's go on dates on the weekends, whatever. And during this time, I came across a remarkable deal for airline tickets from Las Vegas to Copenhagen, Denmark, for $290 round trip.
Wow!
And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And I put it out on Instagram or something. I was like, hi, friends, I'm going to Denmark, and if you would like to come, here's the link for the cheap tickets. And Matt took me up on the offer. And granted, we had only seen each other a couple of times, but in his mind, he was like, I have a passport that I've never used. I just want to go and travel the world. And if I'm going along with a super cute boy, then cool.
So romantic. I love it.
And honestly, I was, at this point in time, I was just like, me and Matt are buddies. We're going to Europe. It's going to be crazy. So much fun.
Yeah.
So we were actually 2 weeks into our journey, and we were in Barcelona, Spain.
Oh.
And Barcelona, if you know what's up.
Yeah.
And we call it a DTR talk, like a determine the relationship. And we just were in our little Airbnb, little Airbnb. And we decided to just talk frankly and say, what do we want our relationship? Like, we started out as friends, like we've spent all this time basically on top of each other while we've been traversing Europe and getting to know each other and falling in love. And that,
in Europe.
It is so romantic. But I wanted to share that story because I think a lot of times we're looking for love at first sight. We're looking for something that happens instantly. And Matt was able to see that me and him are so good together. I was not able to see that in the beginning, but it took a lot of patience and just a lot of trust in him and also trust in myself. To really get to that healthy, communicative relationship that we're able to have today with our little fur baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'll leave with you. It has not been easy. I remember the very first fight that Matt and I had. He had purchased a home. And
a home?
He had purchased a house.
Okay, that's not what I thought you were going to say. Like, maybe, a table or a tree or something. No, a house.
He bought a house. I mean, and I was kind of the driving force behind it. I was like, Matt, market's great. Get a house. You won't regret it. Might have regretted a little bit. But before he moved in, he wanted to do some renovations, and I volunteered to help. I still have like PTSD about laying 800 square feet of tile. It wasn't a very good moment. But during it, the argument rose from the best way to paint a door.
Okay.
That was our very first fight, and I was devastated. We had been together at this point for more than a year, and so it took an entire year to have a fight, and that first fight was the best way to paint doors.
Well, that's what they say, renovating a house, it can do it.
Make or break you, but it made us. We were able to get over it, but I remember going home to there's my mom right there. She works in the library if you ever see her. Hi, Mama Linda. But I went home after helping Matt with some stuff, and I was distraught. I was like, Matt and I had a fight, and my mom was very sympathetic. She's like, oh no, what happened? And I told her it was about painting doors, and I'm pretty sure her reaction was just, oh, you'll be fine.
Yeah. That's good mom advice, yeah.
Great mom advice. But I honestly can't think of like other arguments or anything that we've had just because the patience and trust that we've been able to develop over the years has just become strong and great, and we can get over anything, especially painting doors.
Yes. Well, that's a beautiful love story. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Nikki and Jenna, I know you shared with me before, but you have an incredible marriage story, and I wondered if you might share with us your wedding day story.
Sure. I was teaching in St. George at an elementary school at the time that marriage equality was passed in the state of Utah, and I had NPR on. I turned it on just in time to hear the newscaster say, and if it passes, they will be the 18th state to pass gay marriage. And I thought, oh, Utah can't be that far behind. Never in my mind did I think that Utah was on the front of that half sentence that I had.
Right.
So I teach school. We're packed up to go to Christmas to visit Nicole's family. We're driving in the car, and it comes on again that, hey, Utah just passed gay marriage. And I was like, what? So we get up to her family's house, and it had been on the news all weekend. That is like on Monday morning, there's going to be this big push to have a stay. And so we literally rolled out of bed at 5 in the morning to go get in line. Well, I shouldn't say we. We had, our twins were 3 months old. So we had twins that were 3 months old. And the plan was Nicole was going to stay I was going to go get in line so that we could get through before the stay happened.
Right.
We went to the courthouse, or the Weber County, whatever the place where you get the license.
Yeah.
And I get in line, I'm about 20th in line, and within like in a half an hour, there's 100 people behind me in line. And the people at the courthouse were so amazing because they knew we were all standing out in the cold. It was December 23rd in 2013.
Right.
So they opened up the courthouse an hour early. The police officers that were there to make sure everything went over smoothly had applications on clipboards, and they were like, "Did you fill this out before you get in there so we can get more people through?"
Yeah.
There weren't protesters. I mean, it was just all the things that were in my mind of like, oh, this is going to be hard. It was so beautiful and so easy. So when they opened the courthouse, I called Nicole. She came down with the babies. And so with our 3-month-old babies in their little car seats at 8 o'clock, 8:20 in the morning, we got married. And all the clergy in Ogden had gathered at the hotel across the street to officiate the weddings that had just happened, to make the licenses legal. Yeah. So we, hiked across the street with our babies and had somebody who was a volunteer clergy there to officiate for us. And we were married and legal, which was a big concern too, because we had babies and I gave birth to them, but we had to go through a whole court process to get her to have parental rights. She didn't have rights to her own children until this marriage was legal. So it was a big thing for our family.
And that process of getting parental rights, thankfully you were able to get married and not have to deal with it. Can you comment a little bit on that process and the difficulty of it?
Yeah, it was pretty scary, but I'll let you.
I remember sitting in the hospital close to the day you had the beautiful babies, and I asked, "Can you put my name on the birth certificate?" And they said no. And
that must have just been heartbreaking.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up. She had a friend from when she lived in Salt Lake before that was a lawyer, and I don't even know if she typically practices family law, but she agreed to help us do a second parent adoption. Yeah. So in October of 2013, we went through that whole process and paid money to have a second parent adoption. So Nicole had to adopt her own children. Right. Just to make sure that if anything ever happened to me, that she would have rights to the kids. So it was a big fear. It was a big scary thing that we had. So when we were able to get married, even though I rolled out of bed at 5:30 in the morning, I didn't do my hair, I didn't put on makeup, there was no pageantry about it. It was like, we are doing this for our family, and it's not about, let's have a beautiful white wedding. It was about, we got to get this done. Right. And we had already been together for 10, 11 years at that point. Yeah. So it really was like, oh, we get to be a family now in the eyes of the law.
It was a lot of paperwork I'm the worrier of the family. I'm the worrier. It was a lot of paperwork for being prepared for a lot of things that could happen. Yes, right. And the thought of them taking my kids away from me, heaven forbid something happened, was just, so yeah, it was a lot of paperwork, and to have, that marriage was just such a big deal for us.
What was that moment like, of getting the license? Was it the getting the license and holding the license, or was it going across the street and doing the officiating? Did one have more of a sort of emotional draw to you, or?
It felt like a team effort. Yeah. There were people running with us, walking with us. It was just this community. We met this couple from Morgan, Utah, who'd been together for 40 years. Wow. So it kind of became this, not so much about us, but it became about this community. All of us were taking, wow, this might be the only opportunity we have. We don't know if we'll ever get this opportunity again. Yeah. Thank goodness that's not what happened. Yeah. So yeah, it became more of a community or a team effort.
Yeah, and I would say, like I just said, it wasn't like this special moment about us and a white wedding, but I would almost have rather have it that way, where it was like this big community action, and it was everybody working together, and the people that maybe you wouldn't expect to be helping the process were definitely on board and definitely there to make sure like as many people could get through as possible before this day happened. Thank goodness it didn't actually end up happening that day. Yeah. But the worry was that by 10 a.m. they were going to cut off marrying people.
Yeah,
So-
you thought that there was just this very, very small window and to rush to make it happen, but...
And in Ogden, people came into work early. They opened the building early. Like they were like, let's get this done.
Yeah,
So it was amazing.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing those beautiful stories. That sort of makes the perfect segue to talk about equality and where things stand, you know, and the laws. And I know in our sort of our little pre-interview talk, Eric, we were mentioning the trans bill, and I wondered if you might comment a little. You said you had some thoughts and feelings about that.
Yeah.
And that might lead into kind of where things are today from your point of view, and maybe we can chat about that a little more.
For sure. So in Utah, we're very lucky. There's an organization out there called Equality Utah. They're a nonprofit organization, and what they do is they have teams of lawyers and legal aides who go out there to make sure that individuals of gender and sexual minorities in Utah have the rights, whether it's working rights or housing rights or rights to exist as your authentic self in whatever sphere you're in. And so recently, HB 308, don't quote me on that number, it might be wrong, but it's being proposed right now, and what it does is it's a bill that's proposed that would make it so that trans girls who are in schools wouldn't be able to participate with girls' athletic events, like team sports or anything like that. And personally, when I look back on my own experience growing up, like my team sports, I did cross country and tennis and super masculine sports like that. But like the team and the camaraderie, like those are the things that you really look forward to as you're having these formative moments growing up. And like a lot of those people I'm still in touch with. And that's just, you know, one thing that because you have these different experiences, even if you're going to see a doctor and a therapist and doing HRT and all of these things that even if you've been living as a girl for, you know, your authentic self for years, having that privilege being denied from you is really heartbreaking and really eye-opening that still in 2021, we're having lawmakers that are representing us that are going to this body of lawmakers and saying, hey, let's make it so that individuals that we represent that are wanting to grow up and have an authentic life can enjoy all those benefits. And that's really mind-blowing to me. And so your homework is to contact Rex Shipp and Evan Vickers, because there are representatives down here, and you're going to tell them, vote no on House Bill, whatever the number is.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. You know, it's wonderful to hear the perspectives of how things are going, you know, what progress has been made and what things are, you know, currently happening right now, because I think a lot of people weren't even aware that this bill was up right now. So
and it's I think what a lot of people are calling them are trans panic bills. And recently, especially in like current state legislative sessions that are happening all across the states, there's like 18, 19, 20 states that have these in their queue that they're going to be voting on. And again, 2021, and I'm just like, let people be people, blah.
Yeah.
And it's aggravating.
Yeah. Do any of the rest of you have any comments or thoughts about where things stand right now? And it can be just general equality or specific laws and bills that we should be aware of, or anything about kind of where things stand from your point of view. Do you have any thoughts about that, Jesse?
Yeah, I'll definitely kind of tag in on Eric's trans inclusion as far as sports equality. It is happening in multiple states. It's not just here in Utah. And even just having advocates like the lawyers that are working for them speaking for these youth that are identifying with this gender that they have chosen and are being forced to be put on a sports team that they nor societally look like, putting them in that harm's way is going to cause more trauma than allowing them to play a baseball game with their buddies. And this is also just my own trans experience, so I can't speak for all trans people. And I am also a white privileged male now that I have transitioned. But when I was in high school and on sports teams, I would avoid locker rooms as like the Black Plague. Like I would stay away from them because I felt uncomfortable in there. Not saying that heterosexual folks don't feel uncomfortable in locker rooms as well. I'm not trying to say that as well.
Right.
But there's safety versus like just acceptance of people and who they are and who they identify with. And I see this also in healthcare. Being from Oregon and Washington, where it's a little more progressive up there than down here, my healthcare was a piece of cake. I could go anywhere and feel comfortable, get addressed correctly, using the correct pronouns. Here, we're a ways behind on that. There aren't that many providers for the youth that are here or adults that are here for the transgender community. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed and changed as well. Having those resources for the trans community and all the LGBTQ community. I'm not trying to just exclude anyone else from the community. Just for their care, having it be more advocated through the healthcare process here as well.
Yeah.
And other states, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's definitely an issue that's being wrestled with in many places, for sure. Nikki and Jenna, you've been here, not here, but you've been here longer, and I wondered if you could maybe comment on, in your experience in the last 15, 20 years here, what changes have you seen and how have things evolved? Maybe you could comment on that, your experience as it was and your experience as it is now.
Yeah, well, we moved here in 2006 when Nicole got her job at SUU. And immigrating to the culture, I think part of our love story is her care for me and wondering, like, moving from Brooklyn, New York, how are you doing? You gonna make it here? Do I need to look for another job?
Yeah.
Luckily, I consider myself a very open person who can find happiness anywhere I am, and it's not based on, like, what's around me. But I think the thing that was an eye-opener for me was that when I went through school to get my teaching degree and I started student teaching, it was during the fall of 2008 when Prop 8 was a big issue in Utah. And, well, it was really an issue in California that Utah kind of latched onto, I think. Right. And so I wouldn't say generally it was everyone that I was student teaching with, but there were some people in the school that I was student teaching with that were talking about Prop 8 in the faculty room. And overhearing that conversation, I understood that if they knew anything about my personal life, they would not think it was okay for me to be around children.
Oh, wow.
And so I took that to heart, and when I got my job teaching in St. George, for my very first few years, I did not tell anyone anything about my personal life because I wanted them to see me as a teacher and see me as somebody who cared so much about the kids that I was willing to do anything for them. And that I was there for the right reasons. I wasn't there to convert kids to be gay. I wasn't, I wasn't there because I'm a pervert. I wasn't there for all of those reasons that I heard those teachers talking about. And so it made me very protective. I didn't come out at work until we were deciding to get pregnant. And it was like, wow, if I don't tell people I've been in a relationship for 10 years, they're going to think I got, like, knocked up at the bar. Right. Because they all saw me as single.
Yeah.
And much to my surprise, when I did come out to people, I said, I understand that it's not fair for me to superimpose my previous experience on you, but out of fear for my job, I kept this private. And most of the people that I worked with, I worked at an amazing school with amazing people, and they were also happy and like, thanks for feeling comfortable enough to tell me that. And then going through that whole experience of being pregnant and having kids and having the rights slowly come, I feel like, we moved away for a few years from Cedar City, and when the invitation came for us to come back and be probably the first same-sex spousal hire at SUU, it was a 2-second conversation. There was no pro and con list. It was like, yes, let's go back to Cedar City because we love it here.
Yeah, wow.
And so I feel like there has been a lot of change.
That sounds like a pretty significant shift in less than a 10-year period, from going to the conversation that you overheard and what you felt like that, and then to, essentially hiding a part of yourself because of that, and then to making that transition to sharing it. I mean, that's a significant change, yeah.
Yeah.
Nikki, do you feel the same way, that there's been a fairly significant change?
That's a great question as I'm listening, and when naturally being as old as I am, I have a lot of fears, and when I meet youth that don't have the fears I used to have, I look at them as my hero. But I also understand the reality of, we've come a long way, but we're still a long way away from equality and equal, just feeling comfortable everywhere in America or the world. So just my experience was I didn't hold her hand in public. I didn't put my arm around her because I didn't want to lose my job. And to this day, I still catch myself acting how I acted for 7 years before I was tenured. Then the dean we had at the time, I was just recently earned tenure, and you kind of hear, oh, well, once you're tenured, you can't get fired. Well, that's not really true.
Right.
But in my mind, I thought, well, okay, I'm tenured now, I can come out. But I was still really scared. I was still really nervous. And so what we did is we did an announcement of the babies. Oh. And so my dean actually sent out, Nikki deserves a congratulations. She's just, a beautiful little welcoming of our children. Yeah. You should have seen the talk around my college. In a good way. Yeah. In a really good way. Yeah. So that's kind of, but I think we've come a long way. Yeah. And then to be invited back with my wife, it was such a privilege.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important for us to remember too that it wasn't until 2020 that discrimination was legally on the books in our country.
Right.
So we could have gotten fired for being gay at our jobs up until 2020.
Yeah, that's staggering to think of that. I mean, 2020 is like a few months ago, essentially. That's
a few months ago.
That is staggering to think that, and I think that is, I'm really glad that you brought up that point as that reminder that even though things had evolved and have evolved, that still is pretty recent. Which brings up my next question for any of you is that what would you like to see happen next? And of course we want complete comfort, freedom, equality. But what would you say? Let's say in the next year or two, from your perspective, would you like to see happen?
I don't want to be a mic hog, but I was thinking about this when you were talking about kids in schools having those opportunities. And because I teach future teachers and I teach educational psychology, one of my goals with that is to make sure that what I can do on a real level is hopefully impact future teachers to understand that they're going to have all different kinds of kids in their class, whether it's low socioeconomic status, whether it's a cultural difference, whether it's a racial difference, whether it's a gender difference or gender identifying difference. And just to teach them that everyone has a place, everyone matters, everyone deserves your love and attention, and that those extra details don't matter as much. So I'm hoping that I'm sending a whole new generation of teachers into schools that are there for the kids with what their needs are. And it's not equality as much as it is equity in schools. Yeah. But I do teach that. And so that's just, we could get into politics and policy and we could talk about all of that, but that's the thing that I feel like I have a real finger on. So I just wanted to jump in and say that.
No, I love that.
You brought that to my mind, so thanks.
Let me ask you one more question. Would you, as an individual teaching teachers, it seems like such a pure exchange of information, natural exchange of information to help them. But beyond that, do you envision, packaged curriculum around equality or equity? Do you think that's an option that would work? Or do you think it's more of just a one-on-one evolution in minds and teachers towards equity?
It's both.
Yeah.
I feel like we need it on all levels, especially just knowing the experiences that kids, even kids that I know now in our schools in Iron County, some of the experiences that they're having prove to me that we definitely need teachers to understand, but we need administration to understand, and we need to be actively teaching it in every way that we can.
Right.
Social emotional learning, what it means to be equitable, all of that should be built into curriculum everywhere, I think.
Yeah, great, thank you. Does anybody else have any comments of like, what you'd like to see, or what's for you a priority in the next couple of years that you would like to see happen in terms of moving things forward more?
I think a shift that I'd really like to see from a political standpoint is, like as constituents, we can shift the view and the conversation from politics to people. Because people's stories are empowering. People's experiences are relatable.
Yeah.
A politician voting yay or nay is not. And so when we're able to really focus on making that shift happen, I think visibility is a big thing, and I think this event that A.P.E.X does every year is a great event to bring visibility to the queer community, and then not only like, hey, we're here, we're queer, but also we're people.
Yeah.
And I think that when our communities at large can recognize that the queer community is just, one of the many spokes of our greater community, and then we're all stronger together. We all have the same goals. We all have the same basic wants and needs for our personal fulfillment and making sure that our families are safe and loved and protected. Like, we all have the same exact goals.
Right.
And I think we as constituents can hold the people that have the power, or if they do, they like to think they do.
Yeah.
But like, if we can let them know, like, hey, this is what it's really about, we can see it, why can't you? Then I think that shift, it's going to be like a cultural revolution. I think we need another one of those.
Yeah.
Like, we're big people, we can handle it, pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and get her done.
Yeah, I love it. Well, that kind of brings me to my one of my last lines of questioning. This has just been so cool. It's just about advice. And one of the things we love to do at this event is to offer advice or thoughts or encouragement or inspiration to anybody in our audience or anybody listening or anybody who comes across the video later who is struggling or questioning their path or looking for where to find help, where to find answers. So I wondered if you might have some advice or suggestions for anyone that's in the queer community right now or struggling with their story in the queer community right now. Do you have any advice that you would like to pass on? So maybe, Jesse, we could start with you.
Sure, yeah. I mentioned this earlier, but finding that support system is huge. So whether that's finding like a physical doctor that you can talk to, or even just a therapist that you can talk to, or friends or community, wherever you can find that allyship and feel like you can be yourself is going to be huge. And I think as far as, I lost my train of thought. Maybe come back just 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah, Nikki, looks like
just to build off that before you come back to you. But basically, if you go around campus, you'll see offices of faculty where there's a little sticker. Look, turn your face like that, right there.
Oh,
yeah, we have a safe zone training. Breon, you're here. Wonderful training yesterday. It filled up, didn't it? Yeah. It was great. So we have safe zone trainings. We have and people who have gone and been trained and want to be that support group that you're talking about. We faculty have put stickers. Faculty and staff have put stickers on their doors. And back in, 2000, I don't remember, it was a while ago, I had students come into my office and they wanted somebody to talk to, and it was just an honor to be able to be visible and be able to listen and provide support and share my story with them and say, look, you know what, this too will pass, go ahead, go forward, you can do it. I'm here to help you if you need someone to fall back on or anything like that.
Thank you for mentioning that. Let's just make sure, we'll put it on our website, but if anybody wants to, who may not know about the training, wants to get the training, wants to, get involved, get the sticker on their door to be, part of the help and advice and all of that, where should they go to find out more?
Pride Alliance, we have a website, we have a Facebook page. The marketing team here at SUU put it on. It was really visible, I think. It was really marketed well. So I would say go to their PAC. We have a student organization here They have a website as well. So literally, if you search Safe Zone Training, you'd find us.
Right, great.
Or, and we have a newsletter that we send to our committee. You can join our committee. We meet once a month, Pride Alliance Committee. I know, Victor, you might be here somewhere, but yeah, we have a student organization. I think that's how we found, you. So yeah, there's lots of things going on.
Great, thank you. Other advice and I don't know if Jesse, we didn't.
Yeah, it came back to me. Yeah. And not just, so reaching out for support, getting those allyships, and not being afraid of changing your opinion. Because I think a lot of times people are so stuck in their ways, and maybe one day I'm identifying as X, Y, and Z, but tomorrow I don't. And we were talking about gender fluidity, and I think that's something that will surface throughout our generations as we move forward, is going to be this gender fluidity, and because I see it in the generation below us. Right. And I think our generations are starting to see these different changes, and I think we are going to have a lot more folks open and the visibility to have that open conversation as we go through our diversity change in the U.S. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other advice or anything else that you'd like to share?
In that vein of you can change your opinion, other people can change their opinions too. And it may be disheartening when you come out and you're not fully surrounded by love and acceptance, but it doesn't mean that those same people that didn't love and accept you aren't going to love and accept you down the road. It's a different journey for everybody. Sometimes it can be, days, months, years down the line. But I think one of the cool things about the human spirit is hope and our ability to hope, and that we can hope that, those relationships that we've had at one point in time, that those can, they can change their minds, we can change our minds, we can grow together. So don't give up on hope.
That is a perfect line to end our discussion on, the belief in hope, our human capacity for hope, and to never lose hope, really. So thank you for that. And I just would like to take this moment again to say thank you so much. I know it can feel vulnerable to share, and I just so appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us, and just to help us be a part of things, and just to really live through love with you. And so thank you all so much for your time today and for being here. I really appreciate it. So with that, we'll close, and if anybody has any questions or would like to know more, definitely just do the search. Pride Alliance, Safe Zone Training. We'd love to just have more people a part of the conversation. So thank you to our panel, and thanks so much, everyone. We will see you next week.